All right, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Welcome to you, whoever you are. If this is your first time ever listening to the show today, it's important to understand that you have come on an unusual day. I believe this might be the third time in the 8+ years of doing this show that I'm putting out one of these solo episodes that's just me and not including a guest. And if you were here last year at this exact time, that was the first time I ever did that. And I explained then that this particular week, the week of Christmas, this is posting on Christmas Day of the year 2023. And like last year, I've got several awesome episodes already in the can. They're already recorded, and I could easily post one of them this week. But I always feel crappy about it because every year for all the 8 years, you can see that this week is the week that gets like the least listens. Because people got stuff. People got holiday stuff. And, if it's not like a title that is something that you're really into or you're busy, a lot of times episodes slip past. Not everybody listens to every episode, And so it's pretty much guaranteed that like the guest who gets post the week of Christmas is getting like the short end of the stick. And I feel bad about that. And last year, what I did was I recorded just me doing a check-in. And if you're new to the show, that is part of what I do here. I often talk a little bit about what's going on with me and what I think about things and just like larger questions around the yoga world. And some people are into that aspect of the show. Some people tune in for that. Some people aren't. Some people fast forward over the intros just to get to the talks, and just come because they want to listen to particular guests. And I'm totally happy for that. So just to know that this week is just me rambling on about some stuff, and you might be into that and you might not be into that. And if you're not, you should definitely go back into the archives or come back again next week. All kinds of great stuff. But if you are interested, I do feel like, boy, do I need a check-in. Man, I tell y'all, I don't know about you, but I felt completely overwhelmed this week by basically everything. It's so silly. Some of them are totally mundane things, and some of them are really big, important questions, actually. But left and right, I just felt like everything seemed to be devolving into just absurdity. I'll give you a few examples. First thing this week that just was hard and then also became absurd was that one of my cats was diagnosed as having diabetes. And I don't know if you're a pet owner or you have cats, or if you knew that cats get diabetes just like people do. I never thought about that before. We have 2 cats. One of them is a big fat cat named Willow, and one of them is a skinny cat named Sunny. They're sisters. And recently, Sunny seemed to be like losing weight. She looked even skinnier than usual, and we were feeling really concerned about her. So we took her to the vet, and the amount of money we had to spend to find out if our cat was okay was crazy, and I just tried not to think about it. And then we did find out that she has diabetes, which blew our mind. We would have assumed that the big fat cat would have had the diabetes, but no, the skinny cat has it, and she's young. She's only 4 years old, so it really could just be like genetic. It doesn't seem like we've been paying extra for what we thought was like the good cat food, but it turns out it's got lots of tapioca starch and shit in it that we didn't even look. We didn't look at the ingredients. We just looked at the labeling, and it was like the premium stuff, In any case, we learned that it probably wasn't that we didn't give her good food. We gave her good food. It's that she maybe just was born with this condition, just like some human beings end up having diabetes for no fault of their own. There's treatment options for the cats. One of them is to give them insulin shots twice a day. which seemed crazy. We're going to give our cat injections twice a day. But there's also, and she qualified for this, like this new treatment. It's just like a pill a day that you can try. So all this leads to, there's also a recommended diet. There is diabetic cat food, and it's by prescription. Like you can't just go to chewy.com and order this cat food. You literally have to have a prescription from a veterinarian in order to get it. And so we were talking with a veterinarian about this, and I was curious because we have this other cat too, and we were wondering, do we need to try to separate them when they're eating? Do we need to make sure that our other cat doesn't eat the prescription food? Is it safe for the other cat to eat the prescription food? And the vet said, oh yeah, no, it's fine for the other cat too. In fact, that cat is overweight, so it might be good for her. She might lose some weight eating this diabetic cat food. And it just occurred to me, but wait a second, if it's not harmful to the other cat, then why is it prescription? If my cat, who has not been diagnosed with diabetes, would also benefit from this cat food, it's just healthier for the cat, then why is it by prescription? Why do I need a prescription from a vet to get this expensive cat food for my diabetic cat? It just made no sense. And I got annoyed and upset about it. And it was uncharacteristic for me. Normally I'm able to keep, a pretty even keel. And I'm like, why? Just so absurd and so annoying. And then, recently I've been having all these conversations on this show, if you've been following, about gurus and reconciling spiritual leaders. And I was having some exchange with people about this. I was thinking about the Dalai Lama, and even recently there was the whole thing about the Dalai Lama, and there was the video of the Dalai Lama and the little boy. I don't know if you guys saw it, but there's arguments on both sides of it or whatever. And then I was on Twitter X for a second, flipping around, and there was the Dalai Lama Twitter X account, and the Dalai Lama has 18.5 million followers, and a social media team putting out the Dalai Lama's thoughts on this and that. And my mind exploded. I was like, what's going on? On Twitter X is where I find the Dalai Lama. Is that even really the Dalai Lama? And then I'm like, I just got to take care of stuff. I got to go buy the groceries. So I'm at the grocery store, and I don't know if you've been at the grocery store recently, but everything's twice as much as it used to be. And I'm freaking out about money. And I'm standing there trying to choose butter. And I'm trying to decide, should I get the non-GMO butter? And I'm thinking about that. I'm going to say, wait a second. So this is the butter that's being advertised as not genetically modified butter. Does that mean that all this other butter is genetically modified, or at least could be genetically modified? I suppose that's what it means. I don't know. I just don't the level of skepticism and distrust is just off the charts for me right now. I think really, if I'm really honest about it, these little examples of absurdity and me getting so upset and freaked out about them, they're really just because I was upset about something else that happened in the last 2 weeks, which is that I had 2 different conversations with people I really, really care about, who I've known for the better part of my life, if not all of my life. And in these conversations, we were talking about current events and politics. And these are both people I've talked to about these things, about politics in the past, and we haven't always agreed on things, but we've always been able to speak our minds and say what we really think about whatever it was. But in both of these conversations, I got to a point where they were taking a position that is a commonly held position, what I would consider to be sort of a mainstream narrative around whatever the topic was. And I have questions. I don't subscribe to that particular view, at least not I'm not convinced that that's true. and I have questions about it, questions that aren't being answered. And I expressed some of those questions, and it was met with a feeling of like, oh, you're asking that question? That means you're one of them? Am I losing you? As though they've lost other people that were close to them because they didn't agree with that viewpoint, or they raised a certain question. And if you raise a certain question, then that means that you are a certain thing, like you're on a different team, and you're no longer allowed to be like friends, or I don't know. It felt really scary to me. It felt really scary to me that for the first time in my life, with people that I'm close to, that I've always been able to speak freely with, that I had to like censor myself, or I couldn't speak freely. And I just don't ever remember that happening in my life. And I'm a little upset about it. And then all these other little things that I see in the world, just everything seems so out of whack, upside down. And I realized, like right now, before I hit record, I was like fretting over what to talk about, because I feel this pressure, like this is the end of the year and we're going into the new year, and I'm a podcast host and I'm supposed to come up with something inspiring, I'm supposed to lead us into the new year. And that's really all year what I have been focused on. If you were around, you might remember I've said this a couple of different times, that I didn't want to be in reaction to all of the things in the world that are happening that seem horrible, because that's just me resonating more horrible. That I really wanted to focus on the direction that I want to go, and the ideas that are really serving me and helping me. And I feel like I did a reasonably good job of that this year, of, staying focused on the things that were inspiring me and not getting caught up in being upset about everything that's happening. And, I'm going to continue to do that. But at the same time, as I'm sitting here reflecting for myself, I'm not really feeling all that optimistic. I got to be honest. It feels like a crossroads, a real crossroads, on a lot of levels. On like a personal level, just on who you are and how you're perceiving the world and reality. But also, let's bring it back to the usual frame of the show. Let's talk about the yoga world and a crossroads that I think yoga teachers are at. And that's what all these conversations have been about this year. The conversations around reconciling these gurus and lineage, and these questions around like sourcing things and what can be sourced and what came out of improvisatory space. And do you consider that stuff that came out of improvisatory space to be made up, or do you consider it to be part of the evolution and process of yoga? And all of those questions are part of what I think the crossroads is. And it's also like the professional side, like the money side. The second time I did one of these solo episodes was a few months back. And I was talking about the economics of opening a yoga center right now. And I just had all the stuff on my mind, and I was really trying to motivate myself to see if I could push through what feels like these obstacles and difficulties to getting back in the room with people, to having a space that people just come to and take my class. Like 10 years of being a yoga teacher, like did before all this online stuff. It was just showing up, being in a room with people. And I wanted to try to get back to that. And I talked about how there was a space that I wanted to potentially try to see if I could get my hands on and open up a space here in my neighborhood. And I can give you an update about that. If those of you who were around a couple months back remember, I talked about this space. And it's still possible. It's not off the table, but it's actually it's indicative of why I feel so skeptical and not that optimistic right now. You see, there's this space in my neighborhood, and it's really one of two spaces that are potentially possible for me to kind of open up a yoga center in here. One of them's not ideal. It's small, and I cannot find the owners of that building or that space. It's not listed. There's no leads on that one. And then the other space is the perfect space. I really believe in my heart of hearts that if I had access to this one space for 1 year, and I could put out an A-frame sign and offer some yoga classes and maybe get a massage therapist or two to work out the back room, because there's a back room too, I really believe I can make it fly. I think that this neighborhood is hungry for it. I think I've got enough roots here in the neighborhood now. I've lived here for 7 years, and I think that I could really make something work here. However, this space is also almost impossible to rent. In fact, it's not listed. It's never been listed. There's never been anything in there. And last year, I discovered that I know someone who knows the guy who owns that space. And he was going to try to set us up a meeting so I could talk to this guy about potentially renting. He mentioned that he had this friend who's a yoga teacher. He's really interested in the space. The guy seemed open to it. But, I can't push too hard. I've reached out a couple times. A few weeks ago, I got a text from him. He's like, "Hey, man, are you around this week? I'm going to try to set up a night for us to go out and have some drinks so you can meet the guy." And I was like, I'm available. Just let me know. I was ready to cancel anything that I needed to cancel, any classes or family stuff, just to go to some bar to try to schmooze with this guy who owns the space. And it didn't happen. It was busy. It's December. It's not like people are all that social or have a lot of time. And so I ended up getting a chance to talk to my friend about him and asking him some questions. And it turns out, this guy, he's some rich guy who has this space. He doesn't need to rent it. He has no incentive to rent it, really. He probably gets some kind of tax write-off on it. And in a way, it'd probably be more of a headache to him to have someone rent it than to just leave it empty like he has for the entire time that I've lived here. I mean, even if I get in a room with the guy and I'm schmoozing or whatever, I basically need him to just want to help me, just support me, because there's no way I could pay him what would be like the market value. Like if he wants a restaurant in there, which he clearly doesn't, but if he did want to let someone open a restaurant there, he would get way more money than I could afford to pay him. So he would just really need to be doing me a favor. So like my hope and dream for a yoga center rests on like some rich guy doing me a favor. That feels so shitty. You see, because I can't even just do it like in a legit way. It's not like I can fill out the application and try to show that I have a long history of running businesses like this, or like I did in the past, where I even got like a loan, like a SBA Community Express business loan to start a yoga center, because I was able to demonstrate all these things and I had a good credit score, and like none of that's at play. There's no like usual hoops or rules to follow. It's all just meet the guy and he wants to hook you up for whatever reason. And I just feel like I'm really wondering how much of a yoga world there really is anymore. I said this a few weeks ago, and I was thinking about the Yoga in America study. Does anybody listening to this remember the Yoga in America study that the Yoga Alliance did? They did, I believe, 2 years of it. I know the last one, I think, was in 2016. And then there's maybe another one from like 2007 or 2008. I can't remember. But they did 2 of these studies where they like measured, like how much money. So whenever you read an article about the yoga world and it says a $6.5 billion industry or something like that, they're quoting that study And there's all these predictions about how much growth there was going to be in yoga. And it was presented as like, yoga's a really thriving career for you to get into. And I'm wondering, where's the Yoga in America study for 2023? I want to compare that with the one they did in 2016. I have a feeling it's not going to look that great. I think most people out there, yoga teachers especially, know that this last year was not a great year financially. 2022 was okay, but 2023 was rough. And I think that happened for a lot of people. And I think that we really are at a crossroads because we transitioned online and the internet is changing. The internet is not the same. The internet is not the same as it was like 2 years ago. And if you don't think that, I'll give you an interesting experiment. If you want to try something and see, Google a really important topic or something. Like if you Google, let's say like climate change or global warming or whatever word you want to choose, it'll list, like it'll say like 4 million hits, which would make sense. There's got to be all the official stuff, and then there's all these people writing blogs. I mean, so of course there'd be like an immeasurable amount of pages where someone's talked about global warming, right? So let's say you go down to the bottom and you want to get to, you don't want to look at the first page because everybody looks at like the first couple pages maybe, but let's say you wanted to get to the farther end pages. So you go to the last page of results and then you scroll down, you go to the last page of that result and you try to go to sort of like the bottom of the list. You don't see millions of hits. It stops at about like 400, I think. Try it. If you don't think I know what I'm talking about, I did it. I did the experiment because someone mentioned it to me and it really freaked me out. Like the internet is really not this free, open, expansive place anymore. And while you certainly can still connect with people, like you're listening to this right now and it is on the internet, although it is long form audio on the internet, which isn't like shorts, videos, I'm trying to kind of like cut through in some kind of way. But I'm saying all this because I just feel like I want to be honest. I'm being honest with myself about it. And I'm just looking at this coming year and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. The irony is, I couldn't feel more fulfilled in what I'm doing as a teacher. Like, I think the teaching I'm doing online, like this teacher training program I put out and I've been doing the last couple years, this by far like the best thing I've ever done online. And I think people who've done it with me have had transformative experiences. I have had transformative experiences working with them. So I'm betting that it's mutual to some degree. And I feel very good about what I've been doing as a teacher in my online classes. And I feel good about what I've done here on this show. I feel like I'm better at doing this podcast than I've ever been. But at the same time, I've got responsibilities and I'm just really wondering, what to do to make the ends meet. And I imagine that there are many of you out there who are in a similar place. And we're not always talking about it. Like I started, it's sort of like we're not supposed to talk about what's going on and how hard it might be. But that can't be the end of the story. That's just all of the difficulty and absurdity that's overwhelming me. Because if I take a step back from it, if I take a couple breaths and I set all of that I've just been going on about aside. And I also recognize and acknowledge all of these other moments, all of these other exchanges I have had this year. The emails that I get from listeners when they've had some kind of meaningful experience with the podcast, the moments where I've asked for some help of listeners and I got it. Like they responded, that you responded to me. Or all of you listening right now who have participated in the teacher's song or the weekly teacher's song or in my training or my live stream classes, who've come and engaged in conversations with me, unplanned, heartfelt, shared inquiries. Like I can list countless moments where my heart filled up with profound joy. And in these moments, that's where I feel hope and I feel purpose and I feel the worth of this life. It's not inverted, it's in harmony, And I've been talking about this year. One of the things that's helping me is finding a guiding light. And one thing I've learned is that naming the guiding light God freaks a lot of people out. You just got to be careful about the words that you use. But that there's some guiding light. And for some people, that could be like a creator being. And for some people, that could just be a wisdom current. It could be nature. At this point, I don't care. I don't care what the guiding light is, but I feel like there really needs, at least for me, to be some guiding light. And that guiding light helps steer the moral and ethical questions and helps color the perceptive lens through which I am seeing this world around me. And when I think about these moments of shared humanity and love, and when I think about all the moments where I felt that I've been held by something bigger than me, and the fear disperses and goes away, and I feel the majesty and the power of an existence and of the glory of creation, then I feel just fine. I feel that okayness that we're always talking about here on the show. That sthira sukha, the yoga. So, I don't know if anything that I've said here means anything to anybody else. And, I'm almost having second thoughts about whether or not anybody would care about any of this or if I'll use it. We'll see. But I guess I just wanted to be honest. That's my promise of this show and doing an episode like this, is I'm just going to be as honest as I can. And I'm very happy to hear from any of you. If anybody wants to tell me what they think about any of this. Do you think we're at a crossroads right now? Am I just projecting that on everyone else? Did any other yoga teachers see their income drop precipitously this year? I imagine there are a few of you out there. And what are we going to do about it? Are we going to try to open yoga centers even though it seems impossible? I'll still schmooze the guy. If he texts me when I get back from this trip, I'm definitely going to text him and be like, hey, yo, could you reach out to the dude again? I'm going to try. I'll schmooze. I'll jump through hoops. I'll do the dance if I can. If I at least give me the chance to do the dance, and I'll do it. Because I do still hold that it's worth it. Like there's deep purpose in like opening an actual brick and mortar yoga center right now. That's what I really want to do, but whether I'm going to be able to or not remains to be seen. And in terms of the internet and connecting with people on the internet, I think I'm really going to focus on where it feels the most right for me, because it's really hard to navigate what to do in terms of like how to market things. And so much of like the choices you might make to market something fundamentally compromise the thing. If the thing that you're doing is a improvisatory space, it's really hard. And those of you out there who've gone in these directions as teachers know what I'm talking about. If you teach at a place that has a lot of different styles, and maybe you teach a lot of different styles, and then your heart seems to go in this more somatic direction where you don't want to have lesson plans, you want to show up and inquire with people and discover things in between you. They don't know what to call that class, especially if the other hot class is doing really well. People are like, what's this? Do you have a hot class? That's still happening for sure. Even though we all been siloed, if you do go out there to the brick and mortar centers, it's still very much the case, I think, in a lot of places. So you know what I'm talking about. It's not that easy to make a living when you're teaching a subtle art. But that's not why we got into this anyways, is it? No, I didn't get into it for money, never. So that can't be the thing, that rules the day. I don't really know. I don't have any answers. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, much less what anybody else needs to do. I suppose I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing as best I can. See what happens and wait for signs or messages and tackle things as they come. I can't really do anything else. And I will say this. Some people listening to this maybe know this about me, but my yoga practice really started when I was at a crossroads in my young life. It was a crossroads around reconciling the loss of my mother and going out into the world. Like I was graduating college and my mom had died when I was 16, and I was only reconciling those feelings as I was graduating college, really. And all of it came together. And that's when yoga came into my life, right at that crossroads. And I associate yoga in a way with those kinds of moments in life where everything falls apart or something, or there's this like crossroads and you don't know what to do and you need some kind of help or some kind of resource, and you don't have anybody, any external resources. It has to come from within. And yoga was about that. Yoga was about figuring out myself and finding that inner resource. And here I am again. This is the most yoga that I have, is when I get to these places in life, even after whatever 30 years now of yoga being my thing, still it's the same thing that these things come around, these crossroads happen, and a lot of it is completely beyond my control. It's just shit happening in the world the way the shit's happening in the world. And then I'm just doing what I can do. And that's really for me like what yoga is, So I guess this is where the rubber meets the road, as they say, It's moments like this where I get to really see if all this yoga practice and inquiry I've done counts. How's it going to help me through this moment now when I don't know what to do? So that doesn't feel like the kind of like, I don't know, awe-inspiring inspiration that I might have hoped for this end of year solo episode to be, but it's what I got to offer. And maybe somebody listening to this heard something in it. I do really, really appreciate you who are listening, especially those of you who are listening regularly to this show, and you know who you are. Because every once in a while I hear from you or I get to meet you. Those people, and there's not that many of them in the world, honestly, a couple thousand of you really, who listen every week, who listen because you're interested to hear what I might talk about in the intros and outros, and who've come to think of me as someone you know, even if we've never met, or as like someone you feel like you could be friends with because of things I've said resonated in one way or another. That's who I'm talking to right now, you. Everybody else, I'm happy for you to be here too, but you, that person, the energy and like investment of you putting your attention on the show in that way, I really feel like I receive that. I feel that because, you know, doing this show is a bit of a lifeline for me. It's a way for me to try to keep sane and keep learning, work through things. So those of you who share in that with me and come along for that ride some and in some way, I don't know, utilize that for yourself or get something out of that. It means everything to me, and I'm sincerely grateful. So let's leave it there. Let's leave it on gratitude. And maybe also a note of resilience, fortitude. I already feel myself having said all of this, having started out with like just letting all that out. I can feel this other voice in me being like, okay, man, you said what you had to say. Now do whatever it is you got to do. Keep your wits about you. So I hope that you can find your way to some resilience and some fortitude, and I'm fairly confident we will find our way through one way or another. What do you say at the very least? We be kind. Let's be kind to ourselves. Let's be kind to others. And I will talk to you again soon. I will speak with you in the new year, okay? Please take care. Cheers.